Hello, everybody.
We're live.
Today we're live and Jade's here. Yay. And we're doing
Yay!
a combined discussion for both Oathbringer and Rhythm of War. If you haven't yet read or finished Rhythm of War, don't worry. We're going to save that for the second half of the video. So you can definitely stay for the Oathbringer portion. And we will be very careful about spoilers because we're going to all err on the side of caution. And we're just going to go ahead and kick it off. We might have some people leave at some point, some new faces join later. So this is going to be very casual and fun, but we're just going to start with a general with Oathbringer specifically. I want to know where it ranks for everybody because I've found Oathbringer seems to either be people's favorites or their least favorite. I don't see too much in between. So I'm actually really curious where we all fall within that and why. What specific things make it either one of the best for you or on the lower end? And Christy, I'll let you kick it off.
As
Always your favorite. Yeah.
Okay, so Oathbringer, it's actually probably one of my favorites. It's like up there with Words of Radiance. Like I have a hard time deciding which one I like better, Oathbringer or Words of Radiance. And I think the main reason is just because the flashbacks in Oathbringer were so good. Like in Words of Radiance and Way of Kings, like the flashbacks, they were really good too. But at the same time, I was also like, I kind of know where it's going. Like I kind of know like how it's going to turn out. But then with Oathbreaker, I was like, I completely like didn't know what was going to happen. And yeah, it just kept me on the edge of my seat. And then I just really liked learning more about Dalinar.
And this was your first time reading Oathbringer, right? I
Yes.
didn't. Okay, because I know for some people it's been so long that when they read it, they talk about it in the way you're talking about it. Like, the twists and turns, and it's hard to differentiate what happens when. So I just want to double check that was for sure the absolute first time.
Yes.
I know for those of you who know Angela, I think she's said in the past that she literally forgot the end of the Hero of Ages. And I'm like, how? But it was a big surprise for her the second time around. So I just wasn't sure.
Well, I can relate because I always forget everything I read. So like when I read Warbreaker, I was like, what is going to happen? Oh my God, these like reveals.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also Oathbringer just has like such like so many funny scenes. That's what I love the most about Stormlight. It's like I honestly I couldn't care less about the plot. I just love the character interactions and all the funny scenes with everyone together. So
wow, I don't want to go next. I'll go last, but I feel like just opposite of what Christy said is my feelings. Jesse, though, we'll go in.
Okay,
yeah.
So it goes back and forth with Rhythm of War for me. So Words of Radiance is still my favorite, absolute favorite, and then like taking that second spot goes back and forth between Rhythm of War and Oathbringer. So it's like Christy, it's way up there because I love the Dalinar flashbacks.
Mm-hmm.
And also I might be one of the weird ones. I like Lift. So like the more Lift I get, the better. Like I love her.
Okay, I love Lift. I love Lift too.
I skipped her interlude on the reread, and 2, I skipped Edge Dancer. I'm like, I can't do it. I can't.
I can't. That girl drives me nuts.
She reminds me of my daughter, who also drives me nuts, but is sassy and like just will say what she thinks. So I think like that part of I'm like, she reminds me of an actual kid, like her age, which we don't see a lot. And like I don't like when like kids are made to be like, this is written like an adult, only small.
Yeah.
So I think that's why I like Liv so much, because she is obnoxious. But like like you said, this is my first reread of Oathbringer. So I feel like I forgot so much. I was like, oh, I remember everything. Absolutely not. I did not. I'm like, wait, what? What? This happened? Did this happen?
So I will say I like Wendell a lot.
I like Wendell.
Spread.
You a Voidbringer? Oh, Voidbringer.
He's just a glorified babysitter.
He is. I love him.
Sophia, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I have. The thing is that all of the Stormlight books are the best ever, so it's kind of like doesn't really matter. But no, it's not my favorite. My favorite flipped between Way of Kings and Rhythm of War. and
Yeah.
my least favorite flips between Oathbringer and Words of Radiance. So like the opposite.
The complete opposite of mine.
Yeah, so I still love it, but just not as much as the others.
What about you,
Yeah,
Jade?
I feel pretty similar. Caveat here is that it's been 3 years since I've read these, apparently, probably closer to 2.5, but still, it's been a long time. And I remember that I didn't like Oathbringer as much. Like, Rhythm of War is definitely my favorite because that's the one that really stands out to me. So definitely, I like that one better. But as far as like the ranking of the other, I don't know, it is like third or fourth, but like Sophia said, I love them all. So it's kind of like doesn't really matter. I do really like the flashbacks because it gives you so much more perspective into like Dalinar's history. And I just love putting those puzzle pieces together. And I'm also a Lift fan. So like, I don't hate those parts like a lot of people do. So I think because of those reasons, I might like it more than a lot of other people, but it's still not a favorite. It might be my least favorite, but it doesn't really matter because I loved it.
What do you think, Patrick?
Yeah, I definitely loved it very much as well. I mean, as Sophia and everyone has said, I mean, it is Stormlight. Okay, ranking it actually kind of difficult, but if I really have to choose, I think Oathbringer will have to be my third favorite. Yeah, probably my third. But Dalinar's flashback is probably the best one in the entire series for me. It's definitely up there with Kaladin, of course. But there is something really special about Oathbringer is that I think this is like the best depiction of redemption. Like how Dalinar's past is horrible, it is atrocious, but this is proof that if someone wants to do better in their current life, it's possible. It's possible, and I think that one really stands out to me. So because of that, there is something about Oathbringer, even though it is my third favorite in the series, that really special for me.
Which one is at the bottom for you? Since you said it's third.
Rhythm of War.
Rhythm of War. Oh, no.
Yeah. I mean, for Rhythm of War, I definitely love the book as well. But the Van Lee's flashback, I cannot do. Yeah, that one really lower down the ranking for me.
Yeah. So I have the unpopular opinion of I really did not enjoy on reread Dalinar's flashbacks because so much of what I enjoyed about them, enjoy is maybe not the right word, but the insight that you gain when you're reading his flashbacks and the mystery with Evie and just how awful of a person he is and understanding now it puts into context how people treated him in the first 2 books, why nobody seemed to want to ally him, why nobody trusts him.
Yeah.
And seeing that the first time is really enlightening, but then on reread, I just didn't care. And I also, his acts are so atrocious that it made it harder for me to really feel like he's been really fully, I guess, redeemed in an odd way because he gains that pain, and I do think a lot of us really enjoy that moment of you can't have my pain, that defiance to Odium. But there's a part of me that's like, because he
what?
Oh no!
Oh no! I think Dalinar do not want to be mocked.
Oh no!
Oh no! Now Al cannot mention his name.
And we don't even know what the next prompt is.
I know, we can't just like start. Like,
But
Yeah,
which is great.
Yeah, I know a lot of people don't like this book because it ruins their image or what they had in their head of Dalinar, but I didn't feel that
That's
way.
what I
Like,
loved about it.
yeah, I feel like it just gave me more understanding.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't hate him. He did terrible things, but I still don't hate him.
Yeah.
I agree because it's like people are flawed.
Yeah.
And it gets you to see that like flawed side of him as opposed to.
And he tried to make it like, better, you know.
Yeah. He's like, all right, I gotta.
Is Sophia?
I was surprised that I enjoyed Oathbringer as much as I did.
Message.
Oh.
Oh, so it was like it flipped.
It was also really fun though because my sister-in-law recently got into reading all the Cosmere books, and she, I don't know how, has blown through like the first 3 and is now reading Rhythm of War in like 2 months. I'm like,
Wow.
you go,
That's a
girl.
lot to ingest.
So she was just like
Yeah.
texting me like her thoughts the whole time. And I was like, this is perfect because I'm rereading them too. So like getting her like first time opinions was really fun. And then trying to not be like, but this, but things.
Yeah, I was surprised like I liked Oathbringer as much as I did because everything I heard from other people, I feel like everything I heard was Oathbringer is people's least favorites. So when I read it, I was so surprised. I was like, wow, though it might be my favorite. But it's so funny because my partner is also reading Stormlight for the first time, but he
I didn't know that.
is only
Ooh.
he only finished Words of Radiance.
Ooh.
And his
Oh,
favorite is
okay.
Dalinar because he's like, Dalinar is just like an upstanding guy.
Oh,
Wait.
that'll be interesting.
Just wait.
Oh dear.
I can't wait for that moment and to talk about it.
Right? You're like, all right, just that's like my sister-in-law. I'm like, how far are you into Rhythm of War? She's like, just the first couple of chapters. I'm like, all right, fine.
I can't say anything.
I can't say a word because I just finished it. Like,
Was that
Have you
your
done
first
all?
one?
Have you reread every book in the series? Any of you, or all of them?
Mm-mm.
Oh yeah,
So,
of course.
Of course, Sophia has.
what's funny is
No
I've
one's
reread-
surprised.
Right. I've reread Oathbringer and Rhythm of War within like the past 2 months.
Oh, okay.
And I'm doing a read along with like Roger and all them. So I'm actually starting back over and rereading Way of Kings in like January.
You're gonna
Oh wow,
catch up with
again.
me.
So out of order.
Yeah, that's really out of order. That's hilarious.
Right.
I
But it's my
wanna
first
do a
time doing them on
reread, too.
audio.
Yeah.
Oh, the
So
audio
it's-
is so good.
Because I just started listening to audiobooks like this year. And I'm like,
Oh.
okay,
Wait,
change-
what?
change my life. Yeah. Well, I was never
Life
able to
changing
like
for sure.
absorb the information for some reason. Like it always just felt like it
It's
went in one
practice.
ear and out the other. So I started doing it for rereads, and now it's
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
gotten
Oh, it's-
better.
Oh, okay. I still cannot do it, but I think I should try that on reread.
Mhm.
Yeah, it made it
Rereads
a
are
lot
the way to
easier
go.
to reread. And I'm like, okay, I know the world building, I know like the basics, so I don't feel like I'm losing anything.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
that's a good way
turn
to
up
do
the speed. If you feel like you're not absorbing it and you feel like
Yeah.
you're switching off,
Yeah.
the speed is too slow. Bump it.
Yeah, I had to learn that one the hard way.
Yeah. Oh yeah, if it's too
Also,
slow, I'm
reading
just
and
like
listening at the
drifting
same
off.
time.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So
why
all
I
of you
like
do-
Rhythm of War.
So all of you do audiobooks?
I do now. This is
Yeah.
a new experience.
I do
God.
exclusively
Audiobooks.
audiobooks.
Ah,
Do you
okay,
really?
okay.
I
really
do
like
audiobooks in general, but not
Yeah.
for Stormlight.
Oh, hey.
Hello.
Welcome back.
Not
I
sure
don't
what's
think I could have
happening.
done Stormlight
We were all
on audio
so
for a
lost.
first read though.
Yeah.
We were all so
Yeah.
lost without you.
That's Dalinar stopping you, El.
Yeah, that's what we were saying. Yeah. Dalinar was taking his revenge on you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It would be
That's
funny
okay.
if I started going, if I launched into it and then it stopped again. That would solidify. Just to make sure, can you hear me okay?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I had to switch some things. Not sure what's going on. So I feel bad with the interruption here, but where were we going with our conversation? Where were all of you?
We were talking about audiobooks.
We were just talking about audiobooks. And
Yeah, seriously.
because apparently Jesse
and-
only started like listening to audiobooks recently.
Yeah.
It's a new
Yeah.
thing. So
Yeah. I guess I'll pick up where I was. So the Dalinar backstory and flashbacks. I think on reread, it was just hard to not be further disgusted with him, I suppose, was where I was going with it. And where I was going with this was just to say there's a part where he's talking to Navani about these last, I think he says 2 months have, because he does have that breakdown in present day and Navani kind of has to pick up the pieces. And
Yeah.
I'm like, 2 months? You kind of handled things pretty well for just 2 months, given that back in the day when you were struggling.
Oh no.
Oh my god. Is this really happening?
It really is Dalinar being like, no, you will not badmouth me online.
oh
It's like Dalinar in the high storm, and then like the high storm just hit Elle's area.
Right? It just hit.
This is crazy. Though.
It's funny though because Oathbringer is the book of the Skype call, and this
Blink.
current Skype call is going wrong.
Literally.
The book of the Skype call. I forgot about that. That's hilarious.
Maybe it really is.
What's the context for that?
Because the whole book is like Dalinar having these visions to talk to people, so it's like Skype call.
It's like their version of Skyping.
Oh yeah, I remember when I read that book, and it's like, oh, they, some areas don't have service, and I was like, I was imagining like Dalinar wandering around like cell phone service.
So I'll just message us saying that we should talk about our favorite and least favorite moments from Oathbringer.
All right,
probably a good idea.
Yeah,
I have to like go back to like my notes. Oh, okay.
So
we're fully going into spoilers, right?
For Oathbringer only, yeah.
Only for Oathbringer, yeah.
So I won't have an answer to this really. Yeah, I don't really remember. So I did make like these book diary videos for this book, and I started watching them last night, but it's a lot of footage. Even though like I made like it's like a 30-minute video per like part, so it's like 30 minutes times 5, and I didn't have time to get through them. So I don't know if I'm gonna have a good answer for this.
I don't think I have a least favorite. I just think the Stormfather in general is he's just kind of a silly character to me.
Why?
Like the way he talks. I imagine he's supposed to be like this, like almighty, grand, like kind of character, right? But then some of the things that he says, there's like that disconnect between how epic he's supposed to seem and what he says. So
he does seem a little goofy sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. He's pretty goofy. I liked all the scenes in Shadesmar. I think those were like some of my favorites.
Oh yeah.
Shademar's so interesting. I remember thinking that too.
Yeah, but the scene that had the most impact on me, and I just remembered that this happened, and the reason why I loved this book so much was what happened to Elokar.
Oh.
If you guys are ready to talk about that,
or wait, you were happy about that?
No, but
you loved it.
I didn't love it, but it was like it's such an impactful scene, It was like it's what made me love this book.
Oh God, that part like broke my heart.
It broke my heart too. I remember that now that you're talking about, and actually it's really funny. So I mentioned I tried to watch my like book diaries to remind myself what happened in this book before this, and I didn't get very far. But in the very beginning, I was talking about how like I feel bad for Elokar, like he's trying so hard to be a good king and all of this. And then at that time when I was filming that clip, I was like at the beginning of the book, and like watching that now, knowing what happens to him, I was like, that's so tragic.
Right?
Yeah,
and it's just like the way they did it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because like in the first 2 books, and even in the beginning of this book,
I hated him before this book.
He's such
absolutely.
a clown.
Oh yeah, I was like, it's fine.
Like he's like this pathetic king man, whatever. I'm like, I couldn't care less what happens to him. But then you kind of see hints of like him trying to
do better.
And that scene where like Shallan sketched him and he's like, this is like what I look like, and then it kind of like inspired something in him where he's like, this is how I want people to see me, like this is the kind of man I want to be. And then it comes back during that scene. It was just everything.
Right.
That was rough. Yeah.
It was. And when he was like this close.
Yeah, this close.
Yes.
Like 3 words away.
Say the words. Elokar, just say the words.
Such a tease, man. Gosh,
right? God. I know that was the one. Just
it seems like that one that makes me so afraid for book 5.
Yeah.
For real. There's a lot of those, but also like you cannot have my pain. Like,
that is the scene I remember in that.
That is. I mean,
That
that
has
one
to
I
be
feel
my
like sticks
favorite,
out
yeah.
for everybody.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Was
My
this-
heart
this
skipped
is
a
the
bit
book
during
where-
that scene.
Right? And even on reread, it still
Yeah.
was like, oh my God, okay.
Yes, so
Like,
powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it still hits you. I can't think of a least favorite scene though.
I'm sure the people who
Favorite.
hate lift can think of lift scenes that they hate.
All the listings. I mean, I don't love
I like
them.
Great.
Yeah.
I love
I-
her.
And I love
Old guys
Winfield,
shouldn't
too,
have
yeah.
tight butts. Like that's such an iconic line.
I personally dislike Liv, but not when she is paired with other characters. So I dislike her so much in Age Dancer because we are reading just her perspective, right, all the time. But in this one, we're just seeing her interact with Dalinar, Suzette, I guess. Yeah, but I think that makes it even better, tolerable.
Tolerable. I love
Yeah,
her with
yeah.
Eleanor though. Where
Yeah.
she's like, you can't be good. You have too nice of a butt.
Yeah, old guys shouldn't have tight butts. I'm like,
Have nice butts. This child.
I just love how like when everyone else is like being all serious and like there's a war going on, the world is ending, blah blah, and she's just like, yeah, your butt's too nice for old guys. It's so random.
She's just like, I'm hungry and you have a nice butt. Like,
Where's the food? Come on, like
she just needs food.
Least favorite.
Least
this
favorite.
is the book where Kaladin goes home, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Love that whole
Oh, yeah.
section. I mean, no one's surprised that I like the Kaladin scene the best.
Yeah, yeah.
On brand, but definitely just those moments where he's like, yeah, I'm here. Look how cool I am now. Not that he actually does that, but I'm
Right.
thinking
Yeah,
that. Like,
yeah.
you
He-
show them
Something
all.
like that. There was like I said, I watched a very small chunk of one of my book diaries, and I commented on a scene where like guards were like trying to get him, and he like pulls out his shard blade or whatever. I don't know. He's basically like, back off. Like, what are you gonna do about it now? And they all just like leave him alone. And I was like, that was badass. And finding out that he had a little brother was really cute
Oh,
too.
that was
I know.
Yeah.
That scene made me cry when they
Right?
introduced his brother.
Yeah.
I will say his dad annoyed me.
Yeah.
That might not
yeah.
have been
Oh,
so
yeah.
much in this book, but like definitely just in general.
He's
I want
very
to say maybe my
self-righteous.
least favorite is like his dad. Like he's sometimes you just want to like
Oh, he's
Yeah.
he's one of the
just shake him.
We'll definitely talk more about that in
Yeah,
the next.
It's like
Yeah.
For sure.
I will say this is the book that on reread made me start liking Adolin a little bit more. I still least favorite. My favorite character. Still my least favorite. He still seems like a weird dog that would piss on your carpet when he got too excited. But
What the hell?
That's a pretty good analogy.
I mean,
I think I felt the same
not
way.
wrong.
I think I was never a huge fan of Adolin until this book, and I wasn't a huge fan, but he grew on me in this book.
Yeah,
He
grew
did
on
some
me.
good things. Yeah.
Adolin, he's my favorite.
Mhm.
The thing I love about Adolin is that I love how everyone else has all of these powers. They're all like, what is called
Mhm.
radiance and whatever.
Radiance.
But then you have Adolin. He's just
just
this
normal.
little guy. He's just
He's a
there.
Chad.
He's a Chad.
I had a sword blade first, guys.
Literally, like I think he just reminds me of like obnoxious frat boys. But he starts to get better. I will say that. But he's like obnoxious frat boy, like
Mhm.
for a little while there. Like it's like, okay, you're being nice to people, but like you're still not getting that you still are condescending. But you're being nice. You think you're being nice. Like it's a very but he gets better in this book for me.
I think for me, my least favorite scene from this from Oathbringer, I think this was even worse during my first time reading through it. It's kind of like the love triangle thing going on between Kaladin, Shallan, and also Adolin. Yeah, I'm really not a fan of that. The first time I read through it, I think on second read it was more tolerable, I guess. But on the first one, it was crazy.
So I actually like the love triangle. I don't know how popular of an opinion that is, but it was mentioned in my little bit of reading blog that I watched that like I found it believable. And that's always the hard thing with me for love triangles is if it seems realistic that someone could feel, if it's not too fast and if it seems realistic that someone would have, because I mean that is a real thing that happens, right? Like people can have feelings for more than one person, and if it's done realistically, I can like it, and I did like it in this book.
I mean, I've said it before and I'll say it again, but I am fully team Kaladin and Adolin.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if I've heard that before. That's awesome.
Love it.
I mean, I like them as a throuple, so
That's what I was gonna say.
That works too. That works too.
Patrick was shaking his head.
I did not expect that, but yeah, I guess that could work.
Team throuple, it's fine.
100%. I mean,
Yeah.
it was more than that if you take into account Shallan's altars. So
I mean,
that way.
I knew that we weren't gonna, obviously there wasn't gonna be a throuple situation, so I was like, you know what, let me go on AO3 and get my fix. There are some fix that
I'm sure it's this. Yeah.
it's totally gotta be a thing.
yeah.
AO3 has everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It can
This
be
was pretty
terrifying.
early on, but another scene that I really enjoyed was Dalinar and Nalini, is that her name? Getting married, and like Aelin was so cute in that scene too, and just I liked their little wedding that they had.
Yeah, their wedding was cool. Since I like all the Cosmere like crossovers, I really liked when we got Azure. I liked all the scenes with Azure.
Hi, Elle.
Welcome back.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks.
So you're not allowed to talk about Dalinar anymore.
Don't back that Dalinar anymore.
Yeah.
But you can be on team not Adolin with me.
No, but you're kind of Adolin now.
He grew on me in this book. But I said that he grew on me, but he still seems like an obnoxious dog that would pee on your carpet when he got too excited, or like one of those like frat dudes that thinks he's being nice, but really thinks he's better than everybody else.
I called him a Chad.
I'm amused that the Adolin discussion occurred without me around.
You're usually the only one on my side with this.
I'm afraid to talk at all, so wherever you were in the discussion, I will just listen. So
we've been talking about least and favorite scenes, but I think we've probably got through most of them.
Yeah, so you can begin yours. Let's see how it goes.
So actually, in a weird way, one of my least favorite scenes kind of is the Sander Lanch itself, because
interesting.
I find that it takes, it's kind of a combination of like leading up to it, because I forgot just how long Kaladin and Shallan and Adolin are separated from the rest of them. And I don't like that. I guess it's a trope sort of the let's have the powerful people like off to the side so that things can go wrong for everyone else. And then boom, now they're all back together just in the nick of time, even though Dalinar kind of handled everything anyway, and Yasna and them. But I just was frustrated with how I'm like, oh geez, I forgot how long they're in Shadesmar. And then when they finally get everybody back together, I just find I don't think the build up to this Sander Lanch is as good as or as emotional as the one in Way of Kings and Words of Radiance. Like Words of Radiance has the skies are mine, which is one of my favorite quotes in the whole series, that face off between Kaladin and Zeth. The first one, of course, is really emotional when you think Adolin and Dalinar are going to die. They were just betrayed by Sadeas. And then Kaladin and the Bridgemen go back, and it's almost, tear-inducing. And this one is just so much all at once. And then with kind of characters that have popped up from the novellas and the interludes, and I don't feel that emotion as strongly as I have with the others. So it's not that I think that the Sander Lanch is bad. It's just that in comparison to those first two books, it's somewhat disappointing. But again, as you were all discussing at the beginning of the video, we say disappointing, but it's in reference to other Stormlight things, not just like books as a whole.
Right.
So I think that's
Stormlight is still here and other books are here.
yeah.
Pretty much.
But as far as favorite moments in this, I mean, I love Kaladin going back to
We talked about
and
that,
seeing his
going home.
brother. Yeah, that part always gets me. But I think a lot of it too is that the beginning is so strong. I think the beginning of this one is so strong that I wish that the end had kind of complemented the beginning more for my personal taste. And I think that there's pacing issues throughout this book. There are certain things I wish we would have focused on more. I wish we could have seen more. So I don't think it's that I have any specific least favorite necessarily. It's just kind of all rooted in the pacing itself. I feel kind of bad. I feel like every time I've chimed in, it's been really negative, and then I get booted out. But Dalinar
But you're
did not
safe
kick me
now.
out this time.
You're
The
good
Stormfather
now.
came through and like blew me away, I guess, is what happened. So I've been saying negative things. I will have lots of praise, I promise. But what are all of your criticisms for this? And I'm going to take this banner away in case I fade away, so that we're not stuck in that spot.
Well, I just mentioned mine, but
Patrick.
I just mentioned mine. It was the kind of love triangle between Kaladin, Adolin, and Shallan. That was really my criticism with Oathbringer. Yeah. But other than that, I don't think I have any big of an issue with this one. The pacing was also really good for me. But yeah, the first time I read through it, the love triangle was insufferable for me.
I will attempt to expand on what I was trying to say earlier with Dalinar. We'll see how it goes. Which is just that see the devastation that it all caused in the past. And in the present, it was approximately 2 months that it took. And I understand it's literally been years, but in a way, that's what I was trying to criticize about the redemption arc, is I think it would have been, I'm not saying I wanted Sanderson to like spend the entire rest of the series of Dalinar trying to cope, because it's like that final acceptance. But there's a little part of me that thinks about Dalinar in the past. And I'm like, hey man, if you just waited 2 months, you would have been able to get through it without having to forget about your wife and stuff. So I think it's just hard to do that in a way where you don't waste the reader's time. I don't know how you would have done it, but I do think for something so heavy to come to him, that the acceptance happens with the literal amount of time that he's given. It's not actually that much in present day. So there's a part of me that's like, maybe feel a little worse for a little longer, you know? Which I know is not nice. I'm not saying like you should feel horrible for the rest of your life, but you like a little bit kind of should. And I know he does, but it's just so unfathomably awful what he did. Like little kids and innocent people burned to death because Dalinar got mad, you know? And I wish a little bit that the emphasis on the thrill making him have clouded judgment, because I understand he's like, no, but I did make this choice, even if, because Odium even says like, but I was with you, I'm the one that kind of did it. But I do wish there had been a little bit of like, you did, but I still was in control of my own body. Like I wish that had been I guess worded a little different, which I know is really nitpicky. It's just such an awful thing that he did. But I do respect that Sanderson actually attempted to write a character like this, because you don't really see many characters like this, especially not diving that deep into them and then seeing them through the lens that you do, where we start in present day and then go into the past. And so anyway, sorry, I actually could say it this time and it didn't kick me out. But Jade, criticism.
Did you say my name, Jade? No.
Yeah.
Oh, you did. Okay, I thought you said my name. I honestly can't think of a criticism off the top of my head. I actually really liked the love triangle. We were talking about that before you hopped back on, because I found it believable. Like, I obviously don't love love triangles, but when I can find it, when it's done in a way that is believable, to me. I enjoy them, and I liked this one. I like Lift, so like I didn't have any issues with that stuff. I can see what you're saying about the Sanderlanche being not as emotional, but like the plot of it was like so intense, and just like leading up to the ending, I was just like, how is this gonna come together? They're like in different places, like, and I was just like freaking out about how he was gonna make it happen. So I just found it really exciting. So I didn't have any issues with that. So I don't know, off the top of my head, I can't think of any criticisms. The pacing, I can agree, was not as good as it usually is, but I love the flashbacks with Dalinar and like putting together the pieces. It was a lot of like puzzle pieces being put together in this book, and that's what I really like when I'm reading. So I don't know. I don't really have any criticisms I can think of.
I know in a reading sprint we did, I think I was reading and then talking to you in time and saying, I remember a lot of this, so now I'm just like, all right, like battle with that archer that shoots him, and like look how silly Dalinar is and how flippant he is with his own life, and I was like, I remember it all. I don't know why it sticks so strong. I mean, it's a pretty pivotal part of Dalinar's story and his arc, but it was really fresh for me, oddly, even though it was years since I'd read it. So I think there was a sense of, it felt like I just took it in. But other books that hasn't happened, with Way of Kings and Words of Radiance, it felt not new, but it just enriched the story for me with the reread. And for some reason, the very things you're describing on reread, I just kind of wanted, I don't know. I didn't.
Right. I think that's a difference with a plot thing where like you already know where the plot's going versus like character emotions. You when you re-experience that, you're still experiencing the emotions. So I think that makes sense.
Yeah. Sophia, do you have any criticism?
I have a weird, it's not quite a criticism, but it's not quite not a criticism, because I feel in very two minds about the whole Shadesmar part. Like I really like how much we learn about Shadesmar, and I like that Phil is like a physical being. I really like that, but it's also a little bit like a sea voyage, and that is not a trope that ever really works for me, and I'm not a huge fan of that. So it's kind of, I don't hate it, but it's not my favorite part of the story. Interestingly, I feel like even though I'm not a visual reader, the Sanderlanche in this one is the one that's most vivid in my mind. There's just something about that, you know, seaside town with all the rock being destroyed and all that kind of thing just really sticks out to me. Yeah. So not really a criticism, but kind of.
Yeah.
I know, I can't really think of any like real criticisms either. Shadesmar, I really liked all the stuff in Shadesmar. I think it went on a little too long in this book. So maybe that is my like little criticism, is I'm like, all right, because I also am kind of like Elwar. I don't like seeing all my characters separated. Like once we bring them together, I do tend to dislike the trope of like, all right, we're separating them again. But I still liked all we learned in Shadesmar. I really liked all the stuff with Azure, like I was saying, because I just like seeing crossover. I wish we'd have gotten more Renarin, though. I still wish we get more Renarin. We got a little bit more, and I was like, yeah, and then it's like, not enough for me, because I love him.
Same.
Like, I just want like full POVs from Renarin.
He
I
is
don't
such
think
a
we're
mystery.
going to get that until the back half.
Yeah, that's what I think. And then one of like the later books, I'm like,
What about you, Christy?
Okay, so before I get into my criticism, so I also really like Shadesmar. I like the scenes in Shadesmar because I just love learning so much more about the world, and like seeing this friend that they see on the other side, like they're so much bigger and different than they appear in the real world. Like the anticipation spread, like the little tongues, and that's not what I was expecting at all. And then I think just like the way that the Spren are, it just really reminds me of like Japanese yokai.
Oh, yeah.
That's why like I think I like them so much too, because they're just so cool. But criticisms. So I mentioned before how I really didn't like any of the scenes with the Stormfather because he's just so silly and goofy to me. But he's supposed to be all serious and like I don't know if we're supposed to take him seriously. I
think
don't
it's
know.
endearing. I don't know.
He was just like, I don't know about that, or like some kind of I don't know. It's just like, you're supposed to know everything, and you're supposed to have all the answers, but he's like, nope, and he's like so petulant sometimes. But
I think
also
that
the convenience that all of a sudden he's like, oh yeah, by the way, I can take you into my visions anytime you want. And I'm like, oh, how convenient. And then Dalinar's like, wait, does that mean you can take anyone else? Like, oh, it doesn't have to even be, I can't remember. Does it have to be in a high storm or whatever? But like, can you take anyone else? It's like, oh yeah, you can bring anyone else along with you. And he's like, okay, let's do it. And magically, that's how he was able to show the other monarchs like what is happening and stuff. So I just find it a bit too convenient.
That very thing is why when Sean read Oathbringer, he talked about how it went from like an email chain to Skype sessions. Like, just trying to talk to them and trying to show them. Yeah. I think that was a little convenient as well. One thing, this is actually, I'm not hating on Adolin. I'm actually saying I wanted more build up to Adolin deciding he doesn't want to be the king. Because it's just like it makes him seem so flippant and just disregarding the significance of his role, when at the end he's kind of just like, Dad, I don't want to do it. And I wish you'd seen him contemplate this more and really, because it makes sense. He's not the best choice, and I really like Yasna. I mean, great, right? I love that call, but I do wish that he had more of that in his mind throughout. I guess him not thinking about it is proof enough that he probably shouldn't. But I'm like, I mean, Elhokar used to be the king, man. I think you could, like, I know he really tried at the end. Oh, great moment. Also, I know none of us, I don't think,
we talked about Elhokar.
Yeah.
Okay.
About our heartbreak?
Yeah.
We can talk about it again because it's a great scene.
God, it's heartbreaking.
That though, Elhokar was not the best. So anyway, point being, I just found that decision at the end to be a little sudden. I think it was good to set it up for future things that were going on, and it needed to happen when it did. I just wish we'd gotten more contemplation of that from him. And then to go off of what you, Patrick, and Jade were talking about with the love triangle, if we want to call it that. I think I said this in a previous discussion we did, where there are a lot of parallels between Gavilar, Dalinar, and Navani as far as the way they look at each other and what you see with these three. Obviously, Gavilar and Adolin are not alike, but as far as Shallan seeing one of them as the one that's going to ascend to more power politically, and it's kind of like the safe choice. The other one is intimidating and frightening in a sense, but there's this allure. And I feel like some of the wording is almost exactly the same as what you see between Gavilar, Dalinar, and Navani, that it feels intentional. So I just have to wonder if there was something, because we know how Sanderson, he puts things in intentionally that you don't notice until it happens. And you're like, oh yeah, now it's really obvious. And maybe it won't be anything, but for me, I don't like the present day, I guess love triangle that you get with them, but the implications of why that might be there is intriguing to me. So if it turns into something, I'm not saying I literally want or expect it to, and I don't even necessarily expect it to be romantic. I just, you never know what's going to happen. So there's a part of it that's curious about why those parallels seem to be there, if at all. Maybe it's just all of us now reading into things. And by all of us, I mean, because I've seen people discuss this before, but maybe it's nothing. I don't know. As far as praise, I'm sad I wasn't here for the Elhokar discussion, but the shift in Elhokar is one of my favorites of the whole series, and his gradual growth and realization of what it means to be a king and his obligations to his people and what he wants to be for his son and everything. And then to be saying the words when he dies is just devastating. And the way he dies too. Oh, I feel so bad going back to criticisms, but since we're talking about Elhokar, I just have to say, literally, Yasna showing back up is not done. There's not enough fanfare for when Yasna reappears.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
everybody, I didn't.
Agreed.
yeah.
Agreed. Yeah.
And there's
agreed
a little
completely.
there's a little part of me that's like, did we forget that her and Elhokar are siblings? You don't hear anything about what happened when he showed up. What did he
I
think? Or
forgot
when
they
she showed up, what did? Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like that Sanderson forgot a little. I know he didn't actually, but
I'm just gonna really quickly interject here. Like, I feel like Sanderson sometimes forgets too, because like every time in the first two books, when Dalinar is thinking about like Elhokar is the only thing I have left of my brother, I'm like, hello, Yasna's right there.
yeah. She's just such a force. It's like she's not even a human. They forget that she's
Literally.
related to them at all. Because they're all such a mess, and she's so together all the time and smart beyond her years. And but yeah, I wish we'd gotten a little bit more, because all that you really see is that Shallan's annoyed because she has to be a ward again, which that I like. I like that immediately. Yes, is like, take notes, and then she's like, but I'm a
Okay,
now. So I do enjoy that. But anyway, back to the Elhokar thing. I do love that. I feel bad saying I love that scene, but it is one of the most emotional moments. But not just for the Elhokar thing, but Kaladin freezing up because he recognizes the humanity on all sides and is just like, stop fighting, is, I think, one of the best scenes ever, because we're so accustomed to, not just in fantasy, but with Kaladin specifically, we're used to him rushing in to be the hero, and his actions usually almost always save everybody. But for him to have this breaking point of, I don't want to kill my friends, and everybody around me a lot of them are good people. I don't want to do this. And I think it's devastating, but it's a really well done scene. I get kind of mad at people that get mad at Kaladin, and I'm like, hey, I feel like if I saw everybody I cared about and understood and loved all fighting and killing each other around me,
Yeah.
I think I don't like the idea, like, but he's a soldier, so he should have just killed people because that's what he does. I'm like, I don't like that view.
Yeah,
I think that's how it works.
He's still
Yeah.
human.
Yeah. Anyway, so Elhokar, one of my favorite things about this book, his arc and how all of that's done. I think I started to come in when you were discussing the crossover elements.
Yeah.
So the individual that we see here in this book as well, I do like how they're integrated, and just the like, what are they up to? Can we get a novella about that?
Right, I want that.
Anyway, let's go in reverse. So Christy, why don't you list some praise?
I mean, I think I pretty much touched on most of the stuff. Like the thing that I like the most is Dalinar's flashback scenes. It's just because what I thought the whole time, I thought like he just wanted to forget his memories because, you know, he loved his wife so much and he couldn't bear with that pain. And then to find out that he actually had like no feelings towards her at all, and he was just like, he doesn't want to remember like the atrocious things that he did. And then it's like, ooh, it just creates for such a more like so much more of a more complex of a character than we thought he was before. So like I don't love Dalinar. He's probably my least favorite of like the main four, but I just loved like seeing that about him. Yeah, I can't. And then obviously Elhokar, which we talked about. Oh yeah, and then at the end, I guess when we find out who the Voidbringers really are, that was such an epic reveal. And I love that kind of.
I feel like Taravangian is perhaps one of my all-time favorite villains.
Yeah,
because there's a little part of me that's like, in a sense, I mean, we all don't know what's actually going to happen in Stormlight 5, but I'm like, what if, in a way, because he's trying to do his own version of, I'm going to take all of this onto myself, all this guilt, so that some might live. I'm like, it's weirdly kind of heroic at the same time, you know, like if we see Dalinar as a hero, despite what he's done in his past, because they're of the greater good that will come at the end of this all, then it's like, is there a chance that that's true of him? I don't know. I just think he's so compelling. And every time he's dumb and cries, it makes me really sad.
I loved, oh my god, yeah, the juxtaposition between like smart Taravangi and like dumb Taravangi. Like there was that one scene where he was like really smart and he wanted music, so there's these kids were singing, and all of a sudden he's like, oh, I don't want music anymore, kill the kids.
Yeah, like what?
That might be a bit much, Taravangi.
Like, no, we're not gonna do
Dial it
that.
back.
And I love that where it's like, and then as soon as the kids heard that, they stopped singing right away and the music spread and disappeared.
I also, Taravangian is even older than what they say, because Stormlight years aren't the same as our years, so all the characters are actually like a little bit older. So Taravangian's super old. I'm like, how old is he?
Right, like how
Anyway,
old?
that doesn't matter, but he's really old. And the idea of a really
It's a
old
very Gandalf character.
just him when he's like on the ground crying because he's like, oh, this, whatever it was, like this thing made me, this fire is warm, or it wasn't that, but like something that he just found like, oh, this is nice, it's so nice, and he just starts crying. I can't handle it. It makes me sad. Anyway, praise. Jesse, what do you think?
So, I mean, we've touched on a lot, but there were two scenes that kind of stick out that I don't think that we really touched on, and one of them is in one of Dalinar's flashbacks when Renarin was young. And he brought him,
Yes.
he's like you know, binging and like trying to get alcohol, and like he's about to like flip his shit on this kid, and he's like, no, I got you drugs, like and you're like, oh my, like, because he doesn't show much love for Renarin at all in his youth. Like he's just like literally like, I like Adolin,
He
I
like
don't like
forgets.
this one. He's like,
Yeah.
it's like the air and the spare. Like, we don't really, like, you've got problems. You're not normal. You're not, you know, like, he doesn't even like his name. And then, like, he's trying so hard for, like, his dad's approval. And it's kind of like a breaking moment, like a pivotal moment, I feel like, for Dalinar. And you're just like, like that.
Dalinar also
heartbreaking-
doesn't even really like Adolin that much.
Right. Like, he really doesn't. I mean,
I interpret it less like he's trying to get his dad's approval, more just like he just loves his father that unconditionally, that he doesn't see him for what he actually is, because it's his dad and he's young and he loves him. And that scene is devastating.
Yeah.
Right. That and everything when Kaladin is traveling with like the fleeing Parshmen.
Yeah. And
It's
like
like,
just
it
the one
sets
that
things
just
up
wants his
and-
daughter.
Yeah, it's like it humanizes them, I guess, because like until then we saw a lot more of just like they're the bad guys, the bad guys, the bad guys, the other, and then you're like, no, but they're not. Like you get to know more of them, and it really sets up things that happen later in the book, like the big reveal of who everybody is, and you're like, wait.
Yeah.
That was a really good scene.
Yeah.
Oh
I feel
yeah.
like Christy, really, you look like you're bursting to talk about this here.
Oh, I just love Teft as a character. Like when that one of the most heartbreaking scenes was when everyone's like wondering like where Teft is. As Teft like, oh, he just like where has he gone? And then they find him and he's been like in the moss for days on end. And then they're like, Teft, where's your coat? And then he's like, I sold my coat for, you know, and then it just gets me.
I'm gonna say really fast, Sophia, sorry, before we jump to you, that the Rock chapter of just like, I'm making soup is like battle. I'm just like, I don't need this chapter.
I just
Rock,
want
but I
his
don't
recipe. That's what we should do. We should get like a
Enhance-
soup recipe.
enhance his character really for me. Anyway, I'm sorry. I know some people will disagree with that, but I'm like, you know, side characters can sometimes just be side characters. Although I think he's gonna play a bigger role later, but I don't know if I needed that. Anyway, Sophia.
Yeah, I was saying before, I mean, my favorite is, you know, any moment with Kaladin is always going to be my favorite, but him going home again and finding his parents, and I seeing Roshone again and being like, look how great I am now. And he's just like, I can't remember her name. The Roshone's wife that he used to, Kaladin
Laurel?
used to like. Laurel, yes.
Ah.
When he's like so shocked that she's still with Roshone and that she's actually happy in that relationship. The whole thing. Love it.
All right,
Wouldn't
guys, I gotta
change a
take
thing.
off.
Yeah. See
Bye,
ya.
Jesse.
Bye, guys.
Jade.
So I really like the ending, the Sanderlanche, and how everything like comes together. I mean, I always love like the what's the trope called? Like Calvary saves the day. That's not what it's
Oh
called.
yeah,
but,
here
you
come
know,
the
Here comes the
cavalry.
Here comes the
Yeah,
cavalry. Yeah,
That's one of my favorite tropes. So like to see that kind of in action here, I really liked. I mean, I liked it all, I think. I mean, that's not true. Like, we've talked about a few of my complaints or whatever, but for the most part, I liked it. Like, I really love putting all the puzzle pieces together. So, like, seeing Dalinar's background come together to explain why he is the way he is. And then also, like, the puzzle pieces we learned about in Shadesmar and how, like, things are reflected in the different worlds, which we touched on a little bit. I loved all of that. Yeah. I don't know. I like it.
I want to say too, I really like when the one woman wants to try to become a windrunner, and Kaladin's like, "Oh yeah, you can become basically like a secretary." And I think it was Relaine is just like, "Buddy, come on! Like, how can you be so progressive in one area and so dumb in another?" And the girl's like, "Oh, never mind, sir. I don't want to do that." And he's like, "Oh, like an actual windrunner." I like that he's written his characters in a way where we're reminded that this is their culture, this is how they are, and it takes time for them to rework some of unraveling what they've been taught and know as the norm. And just even like Dalinar choosing to write this book, I think is interesting too. And his sort of going up against the Ardent about religion and what he's doing, and I like that character kind of pushing on back against him. Petrick, though, sorry. Praise.
For me, I think my favorite scene will have to be in the Sanderlanche itself. Of course, like the "If I must fall, I will rise each time a better man." I think that one is one quote that will stay with me for a very long time. I like to think that as I grow up and I keep on getting older, I make more flaws. And I think that line really sticks, that I have to do better every time I make a mistake, right? But this, of course, as you said, this doesn't mean that it excuses all of his actions in the past. What he did is absolutely awful, and I'm not even sure that he's actually redeemed now. But taking that first step is just incredibly important. Yeah, so that one really sticks with me. And I also love the Shadesmar. I mean, the Shadesmar has become such an important thing, not only in the Stormlight, but in the entire Cosmere. So getting that for the first time in Oathbringer, yeah, of course, back then I did not realize it would be this important now, but yeah, it was really good.
I find too, I think Oathbringer in a way does fall into some of the typical middle book syndrome feeling, but it's not just middle book for Stormlight. It's such a pivotal book for making the Cosmere much further reaching and connected. It's like that first step before we see like how intense it is in the Lost Metal and how intense it is in Rhythm of War. So it kind of had a lot to do. There's just so much to pack in. And I think I miss some of those quieter, more intimate moments that you get in the first two books, and the way that how big the endings are big for their world, whereas in Oathbringer, obviously it's big for their world, but there are these implications of what's to come that I just think I think, Jade, it might be you who you've said before you really like beginnings, and I feel like this is one of those moments. I don't think I know you've said that in the past. Maybe you said it in the chat when I was absent, but
I hadn't said it yet. But yeah, I do. Okay. I mean, beginning books are often beginning of series books are often my favorite, just because that's where it all starts, and I just always look back on it with fondness. And same for Way of Kings, like that one and the final book that we're going to talk about next, that I'm forgetting the name of, are like tied for my favorite, because I can't let go of the beginning. But yeah, I do tend to love beginnings.
And in a sense, middle books, I mean, this is not a profound statement, but they're kind of like the Wednesdays of series where you're just like, this day is not the end of the week, and it's not
Go-
the very beginning where you're like, this week's gonna, if you're optimistic, like this week's gonna be a good week. Like if you have a good Monday, you have a good Tuesday, Wednesday rolls around, you're like, I deserve the weekend now, you know, and I'm still so far away. So in a sense, this book is just kind of like, it's got that going against it, sadly. But overall, I mean, what happens in this book is extremely important and pivotal for the rest of the series, the Cosmere as a whole. I think I've said quite a bit about this. I think I'm good to jump now into Rhythm of War if everybody else is. Yeah, okay. I just want to put this on the screen really quick in case. Were you gonna say something, Christy?
I just wanted to mention like two more quick things about Oathbringer.
Yes.
The scene where it's like what's the most important step like a man can take, and then like it's finally revealed it's the next one. I'm like, I just feel like that is so like, okay, inspirational, but also so like it works so well with like the whole theme and the lesson of this book. So I really like that. And then another scene that just made me laugh so hard was when Amaram was fighting Kaladin, and he's like, I created you, like I forged you. And then all I was thinking during that scene was in Mean Girls, when Regina George is like, like I created her, I invented her, about the main character, and that's all I could think about.
Somebody needs to make some kind of parody where like these characters are like like some hybrid of the two.
You know what?
Dalinar's like mom.
An image of Shallan, Kaladin, and Adolin doing that dance that they did in the
Jingle Bell Rock dance. And then Hoyd's like the mom filming them. Okay, those are all mine.
I need somebody to make this now. I'm really glad that you brought up. That's a great way to end our discussion on Oathbringer. I feel like I was such a downer, but at the same time, I loved rereading the first two, and this is the first one of Stormlight I didn't love rereading. So I think that's why it came out. But also now switching into Rhythm of War, such a high for me. Like immediately, I love the opening of Rhythm of War so much. I think it's it's probably the best for me opening of. Ironically, Oathbringer's opening is great too, with Kaladin going back and everything. But the whole first like 150, 200 pages of Rhythm of War, it's like, all right, we're back. I actually think this is a time skip utilized really well, and I'm just gonna jump right into the fact that them calling what I'm gonna say is a ship, calling it the fourth bridge was so it hits so hard, and like Navani acknowledging the bridgeman in that way, and how it's kind of what Jade was saying, where it's the beginning and then this, where it's sort of finally we're getting that full circle to events from the past and everything. It's just so good, and I'm gonna end up just talking nonstop, so I'm gonna let all of you jump into it. So Patrick, you were saying this one is at the bottom, and you were mentioning it's partially because of the flashback sequences. Is that the entire reason it's at the bottom? That's just kind of the defining quality?
Yeah, that's really the only reason, because generally I love almost the entirety of Stormlight, but this was the first time that I felt bored. Yeah, I was really bored. Not only that, usually my memory on the details of the Stormlight archive is quite distinct, but this one I just don't remember anything. What happened in Venli? Have I even read the book? I don't even know now. Yeah.
I have the horrible, like, I constantly get Venli and Eshni mixed up, and they're not that alike, but I always feel like, which one lived? Which one is it? Which is stupid because they're very different. They have very different stories. But then when I think about it, because Venli has a moment where she thinks, oh, like the wrong sister died. I'm like, kinda. Eshni was pretty cool.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
For me, I just think that Eshni is such an important character, and I just kind of felt like it's kind of like a disservice to the character that she died that way. I mean, I wanted more out of Eshni, and we did.
And it was off page, right? Like,
it's off page, and off page is something that I'm not a fan of, especially for a character like Ashenai. Ashenai has been
Right,
so
yeah.
crucial in the first 2 books, but I was glad though that in Rhythm of War we did get that one final scene with
That
Mhm.
very
Ashenai.
end.
Yeah, that's really all I need from Van Lee's flashback. Okay.
That
Yeah.
Eshonai scene when, because there's the part where Dalinar, the Stormfather's like, I made an exception once, and Dalinar's
Yeah.
like, when? And then you see when he allowed. Oh man, I get emotional thinking about it when he allowed her to see everything because all she
Yeah.
wanted to do was travel.
It
Mhm.
was
Oh
amazing.
man,
Yeah.
that makes me want to cry. And she had this like pure joy moment, and the fact that she swore an ideal, but she was underwater, and that's why she died. I'm like, that
Yeah.
sucks. So yeah,
Yeah.
Esh and I just wish that she had been around still because she was a really great character, and she was a character I would have liked to have gotten more about. And I know you
Yeah.
do through Venli, but I think I'm kind of echoing what you were saying. I wish we could have gotten more Esh and I backstory, and less Venli just being like, "Ugh, my sister," all the time.
Yeah.
That's the thing,
Um,
because I think Rhythm of War was very, very close of becoming my favorite. Because other than that, I really loved the book. Everything about it was just so awesome.
Jade, you were saying it's tied for Way of Kings. Do
For
you think
first,
that it?
yeah. But really, I think if I'm being honest with myself, it's probably my favorite. It was the most emotional for me. I remember I just cried so many times and so hard. And the reason why Way of Kings is possibly my favorite is just because it's the beginning. And like
Mhm.
standing up against that emotion that came for me with Rhythm of War, it doesn't really compare. So like real truth, it is my favorite. Mostly because of a lot of the puzzle pieces that came together, but a lot of the emotions that I felt. I cried a lot while reading this one.
I almost cried so many times at the end. The scene we were just talking about, the Tien moment. Oh my gosh, that part! I
That
was like,
moment
"Why
got
are you
me.
doing this to me?"
Mhm.
I even Raboniel or however anybody else wants to pronounce it is
Raboniel.
fine. But
That made me
just
cry a
when
lot.
Yeah.
she also is up there, even though she's not in all of the Stormlight. She's one of my favorite, again,
Mhm.
villains. I'm using quotes because she's so interesting. She's
Yeah.
an intriguing character. Her, I guess you could say, motives are actually understandable. How she compliments Navani. She's just such a fascinating character.
Mhm.
And the whole reason that she just wanted to end her daughter's eternal suffering, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really very well done. So many things about this.
Yeah,
And
her
Teft,
storyline is
okay.
what made me cry the most, I think.
Yeah.
Teft, it's not just that he died. It's the fact that he was so full of hope. And I was like, what are you doing here? Why did you have to word it like that? It made me so sad. Anyway, I apologize. I knew I was going to start just being overbearing. Hey, it's Jessie May. Yay!
Hey!
Jessie, that was very good timing. We only just started getting into Rhythm of War, and we're
I
talking about
noticed.
Perfect timing.
Rhythm of War.
we're talking about
Come in.
we're talking about where it ranks and why. And I am going off topic a lot by just talking about like here's why it's amazing. But how about Jessie? We'll let you go ahead and speak, and then we'll go back to Sophia and then Christy if that works. But Jessie, where does it rank for you in the Stormlight archive?
Not to put you on the spot or anything.
Question of the century. I always have kind of mixed opinions on whether it's Way of Kings or Rhythm of War. It like changes day to day.
That's what I was just saying.
I think today it's Way of Kings, Rhythm of War, but oh my gosh, it's such a toss up which one takes that top spot. And then it's Words of Radiance and then Oathbringer for me. So that's my ranking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was saying that it's a tough call between Way of Kings and Rhythm of War for me. But if I really think about why I love those two, Rhythm of War is much more emotional, and Way of Kings is just like the beginning. And I don't feel like that's necessarily a good enough reason for it to be the top spot.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give it to Rhythm of War today, like you said.
Yes.
Today.
It's also
Today.
really difficult to beat Kaladin. He is like my favorite character of all
Yeah.
time. So the more Kaladin, the better. I mean, Oathbringer, I was trying to not just encompass all of my criticisms as there's not enough Kaladin, but in some ways, I feel like that is it's his least prominent appearances. That
Mm.
was a weird sentence. It's the least amount we get of Kaladin of all the books
Yeah.
is Oathbringer,
Yeah.
and so I think that
Oathbringer.
hits for those of us that are big Kaladin fans. That's a big reason. But Sophia, sorry, where does it rank and why?
Yeah, so I'm the exact same as Jessie May and Jade, that it flip-flops between Way of Kings and Rhythm of War, and I think today, maybe just because we're talking about it, it's Rhythm of War. But I mean, I'm totally with you in terms of the flashbacks being the weakest, and even Sanderson says that. He says himself, like, they're the weakest flashbacks, but I needed you to know that you
Yeah.
find out in those flashbacks, so they needed to go somewhere, and it was difficult for him to write them
Yeah.
because there is some stuff that we have already had to know, so he's a little bit covering the same ground again, which is always going to be less interesting. But even I feel like the other stuff that happens in Rhythm of War is just so
Too good.
good, but for me it eclipses the fact that the flashbacks are the weakest. So
I didn't realize that people, or even Sanderson, said that the flashbacks were the weakest. I like the flashbacks because we learn so much more about the Parshendi. Like, they've always been such a big mystery, and like I said, I really enjoy putting together like the puzzle pieces and getting those little clues and seeing into their culture was like really interesting to me. So I like their flashbacks, because how do you learn about the Parshendi without having that sort of flashbacks for them, you know?
Yeah.
Another emotional thing too, since we've been touching on those about the end of this book, is when the mom remembers Venli, because I think, is it Way of Kings or Words of Radiance when you actually do start to see more of the Parshendi, and you see the mom starting to lose, and it's really sad because my grandma had dementia, and when you start seeing people losing their awareness of what is happening around them and stuff, and just that slow, her not knowing where she is putting herself in danger because she's getting lost and things like that, and you're like, I don't think a lot of us would have expected the Parshendi to be where we would see this in our Stormlight archive, but it just shows that there is a connection even across, you could say, species, which I think was really well done. Christy, where does it rank?
Oh man, okay.
This is very fresh for Christy. She just finished this last night at
I finished this last night at 3 a.m. My first read of this. So
it's very fresh.
I only really like started reading it earlier this week. So I was like, I have to make this live show, so I have to finish it. So I sped through it and listened to the audiobook while like I did immersion reading with the audiobook. And I've never done the audiobook for Stormlight before. I always read the first 3 books with my eyeballs. And so I have a very distinct like voice for everyone in my head. So I feel like because I listened to it so fast on audio, that affected my enjoyment because I don't love these audiobooks. I don't love the audiobooks.
Not a fan of the narrator.
Yeah. And I guess also because like I couldn't really take the time to really sit with everything as I was reading, because I was like rush. So right now, I'm definitely gonna give this book a reread and give it like the time and respect that it deserves. So, but right now, it's probably one of my least favorites. But also that it is because of the flashback scenes, because. As we were saying in Oathbringer, like those flashback scenes were just so strong. But I feel like in this one, as you mentioned, Sophia, like even Sanderson himself said, like because we already knew a lot of the context and stuff, so a lot of it kind of felt a little bit repeating. And then, yeah, it's just like the stuff from Venli's perspective, I just feel like we didn't really get, like, I don't know what I got out of it, you know, that we didn't already know about how they were researching the different like spren and looking for the different forms and stuff. But I did like to see like the dynamic between Venli and Eshonai and the relationship with their mom.
Yeah.
It is there were a lot of strong scenes in this too, so I didn't like it. It's still a 5 stars.
I think that's also why Sanderson, I think, started the flashback from part 3, right? I think it was from part 3. Unlike, usually it was from part 1, like in book 1, book 2, and book 3. Yeah. But
Yeah.
Before I sign off here, I just want to say that there is a chance that on reread I might enjoy Rhythm of War more, because right now at the state I have done a second read of The Way of Kings up to Oathbringer, but I haven't done it for Rhythm of War. So who knows? That might change.
So, Patrick, to that point, I'll say on reread, I think it's what established Rhythm of War as maybe my favorite, because
Mhm.
I just felt like the emotions were still there for me, even though it was the freshest of all of them.
Yeah.
And I felt like I had a better grasp on a lot of the world building elements. And I stayed up so late the other night and many a night recently looking at like theories, and like then as I'm reading, I'm looking at points that might prove these various theories and stuff. And it has made the reading so good. So maybe that'll be the case if you do reread it. Hopefully,
Yeah.
anyway.
Who knows? Maybe it will. Also, before I sign off, I need to talk about one thing. This is kind of like a different, but this is something that you touched upon earlier, and I think it is very interesting. This regarding the love triangle thing that you mentioned regarding Gavilar, Dalinar, and also Navani, and then Kaladin, Adeline, and also Shallan, right? But that got me thinking, because I have always thought that Odium's champion will be Adeline. That's really my thought. Okay, so in a way, what if okay, Kaladin end up fighting against Adeline? So it's kind of like Dalinar against Gavilar. So yeah, so that's kind of interesting. Okay.
I used to think really strongly that it was Adolin, because he talks about like I was born under the 9 shadows or something like that, and in the there's like some kind of prophecy or something like that regarding Odium's champion there being these 9 shadows. I don't want to get super into it because I want to do a whole, and I'm still like looking into it, but currently I know there's a lot of holes in this, but I think the Herald Talon, or however you pronounce his name, Talon, I think that's going to be the champion, and I think he is El. Weirdly, somehow. I don't think that, you know, the guy that shows up, El, the mysterious like Parshendi at the end, because Talon's full name is like Tal Elenel or something like that. There's an EL at the end. And there's like
that is a good one.
There's so many interesting, because when he shows up, he like doesn't know who he is and he's confused, and then sometimes he's like, I'm a herald, and then other times he doesn't, and Ash recognizes him, but she has her own things going on because they have like their madness associated with their surges or something like that. Anyway, there's like so many interesting potential, but one of the things in my mind is there were 10 heralds, right? So wouldn't it make sense that the one that got left behind, there was these 9 shadows, like the people that like the swords being the shadows or something? And anyway, there's just so many things about it that I like really, because I'm like, I know a lot of people have pointed out things that are like, no, that wouldn't make sense, but I don't know. There's like a lot of other additional elements and things Sanderson said in interviews and stuff that I'm like, I feel like there's something with this, because I wouldn't think he would just introduce this villain at the end of Rhythm of War that we've never seen. That's very unlike him. Yeah, and I'm like, I feel like it's been right in front of us the whole time and we haven't seen it. I told Jesse the other day, for anybody that doesn't know, and I'll do a whole video on this too, the theory that Shallan's mom is a herald. Have you all heard this theory? It's cool. I love this theory. Oh, Christy. Okay, you know the red-headed herald in the back of Rhythm of War?
Yeah.
That's the we haven't seen that herald.
Yeah, I don't look at the covers.
Honestly, okay. Like
that one.
Interesting. See, I avoid any discussion to do with Stormlight because like I don't want to be inadvertently spoiled. So like I don't look at any theories. I don't look at any. So all this is like news to me.
Oh, Christy, I'm sorry.
Oh no, this is great. Now I'm caught up, so I can actually partake.
Okay. Yeah, that's it. I was like, if we're at this portion of the discussion, we're all caught up.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's just so many interesting theories, and that one is a lot more solidified in a lot of fans' minds because there's a lot of evidence. The other one, there's not as much, so I've been very much enjoying looking into that. But Patrick, you said forever ago that you had to leave, and I feel like we've just like roped you back in. If you
it's
need
okay.
to go, feel free.
I wanted to talk about that one too, so yeah. Okay, I think I gotta go. Thank you so much, everyone, and I hope you have fun. Bye bye.
Have a good night.
Yeah.
So even though we've a lot of us have said that we didn't love the flashbacks, or maybe they're not our favorites compared to the others, let's start on the more negative side with this one, and then we'll kind of lead into some favorite scenes, praise, emotional moments, those sorts of things. So if we have criticisms beyond the flashbacks, what would they be? And Jesse, do you want to start this one?
Sure. I actually just rewatched my spoiler review of this book because I was like, I only read it when it first came out. So I was like, what did I think of
I only read it when it first came out too. I attempted to watch some of my book diaries, but it was way too much footage to get through. So I'm going off memory.
Yeah. So what I said in my reviews was one, there was a pacing moment in part 3 that I took issue with, where it was Kaladin continuously sneaking around Urethru. And he was just like for chapters and chapters, like he'd just like sneak from one place to the next, and you're like, okay, we get it, we get it.
Jesse, I'm gonna pause for just a second because Jesse, the other Jesse, was here earlier, and she really wanted us to say that for Rhythm of War, someone needs to mention that it's basically Die Hard, where Cal is John McClane. So it was fitting to you talking about him sneaking around. So there you go.
There you go.
Jesse. But anyway, sorry, continue.
And the ending of part 3 is, I think, the moment with the well. So that, I mean, the ending of that part is just like when it, and I'll save that for my praise. But yeah, that was like the one time I was like not down with the pacing was just that moment of him just like sneaking around for so long. And then the other piece of it was Oathbringer made Dalinar one of my favorites. Christiana, you don't love Dalinar.
I loved Oathbringer, and I loved like all the things about Dalinar.
He's like my favorite now after Oathbringer. But he kind of like took a step back in this book a little bit.
Yeah.
And all of the other characters shine so bright, but Dalinar really didn't have much to do. And especially just coming fresh off of Oathbringer, where like he's just shot up. It's like my favorite after that book. It was kind of a little bit of a disappointment to not get more from him. So those are like my two things that were the biggest things about this book, but the praise far outweighs my criticism.
I think too, what we were talking about for those of us that are really big Kaladin fans, and thus it affected our enjoyment of Oathbringer a little bit. It's exactly what you're saying, where I can see people who love Dalinar and he's their favorite being disappointed in Rhythm of War for that very thing.
Yeah.
Jade, what are your criticisms? If you have,
I don't remember. I don't remember my criticisms.
It's your favorite.
And all the things that I remember are good things. So I'm gonna have to bow out of this part because I really can't remember what I didn't like. So I don't remember the pacing issue. Although the sneaking around thing, that kind of rings a bell, but I don't think I hated it. I like being sneaky, or like sneaky characters and stuff.
I think I liked it because Jesse, when we were talking about Oathbringer, I was saying the Sanderlands just gets so intense and we lose some of the more personal aspects and more emotional parts. And I think I felt that intensity and the fear that Kaladin is experiencing in those, and the fatigue he has when he's sneaking around and like he's just trying to protect Teft and he's just trying to like, what do I do? What do I do? And I think that was exciting, edge of your seat.
Yeah, I feel like it was, to me, it was like intense because there was so much at risk. Like if he got caught, it would be like such a big deal. And yeah, I remember feeling like the intensity of it and not finding it boring.
But he does sneak around a lot. You're not wrong.
Yeah, you're not wrong about that.
I don't remember how long it was, but I remember it being enough where it was like, this is a really long time.
How I felt about the characters in Shadesmar and Oathbringer, of just being like, okay, like this is interesting, but I like things are happening and I need them to get back.
Yes.
Sophia, so what are your criticisms?
I think my least favorite part is just Shallan in Shadesmar. I'm just like, can we kind of, well, one, can we get back to Kaladin, please? Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah.
And also, can we just kind of figure this out now, please? I'm like getting really frustrated with, I think I get frustrated with Shallan quite a lot anyway, like throughout the series, but I think there's something about how, like, the more interesting part in Shadesmar to me is the Adolin stuff. So I'm like, okay, yeah, Ghost Bloods, books thing, want to find this guy. Okay, I get it. Can we just like move it along, please? Thank you. That's it.
Her
But I
being
still
mean
enjoyed
to
it.
Pattern was devastating. I
Yeah.
was like, stop.
I love
Stop.
Pattern.
Pattern is so sweet
Pattern's
when he's
so
like, I'm
cute.
sorry.
See, that's like a completely different voice than I imagined for Pattern when
I
I
love
read it. So I
Pattern's
was like,
voice.
I was
Did you say
so
it grew on
shocked when
you?
I heard it. Yeah,
Did you
it
say
threw
it
me
grew on
off.
you? Yeah.
It grew on me eventually. Yeah.
Okay,
When
good.
I
'Cause
read it
I
the
love
first
Pattern's
time,
voice.
Me too.
when I read Rhythm of War the first time, I didn't have the audiobook, so I did have Kate Redding's version, but I hadn't heard Michael Kramer do Pattern, and it's completely different. And I'm like, can we like a little bit?
A
Yeah.
lot, yeah. I mean, it's not like they don't
We
know
live
each
in the
other or
same
anything.
house. Could you discuss this, please?
That's how I
really
feel
like
about
the, like,
pronunciations in Wheel of Time. Like they like do different pronunciations sometimes of names,
that
and it's
must
like
get
you guys live
jarring.
together. Like, come on, talk about this.
Oh, it's them too. Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Michael Kramer and Kate Redding are married, if you didn't know.
I did not know that.
I knew that, but I didn't know that they were also doing like the Wheel of Time.
Oh, they did
Yeah.
all of the Wheel of Time. Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
Sorry, Christy, though we kind of.
No worries. My criticisms, I think I can't remember, but the one main one that I can think of is the same thing that I said for Oathbringer. It's just some of these like godly beings, when they talk, I just can't take them seriously. Like when Odium, he talks to Moash, right? And they're planning what to do about Kaladin. And then Odium is just like, can you think of a way to hurt him? Like, can you like maybe drive him towards me? I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you're supposed to be like this evil god. Like, figure it out yourself. And it's just, I don't know, it just makes them feel like not as scary, not as daunting as like I thought they should be. So it just makes me not be able to like take them as seriously. I had another one because I was like looking at my notes, but I cannot remember right now.
Maybe if your memory is jogged later, feel free to interject and say.
Yeah.
One thing that did spark for me that what you were just saying about the conversation between him and Moash. It is a tiny bit cheesy to have Moash be, well, there's this one man who might, like, I have to destroy him. And so I'm like, it's a little like, why doesn't Moash just go for him? You know, like, just, I gotta purge myself of this one last thing that remains that reminds me of my humanity and what I've done. And I want to get rid of that. And like, because the pursuer is just, he's just so out there that he's like, I have to get it. And you're like,
he's my other criticism. He's my other criticism now that you brought him up. He's so dramatic and annoying. I'm like, are we supposed to take him seriously, or are we supposed to think that he's like kind of silly?
Feels almost inspired by like some kind of berserker and Viking lore, or like he feels like almost like Sanderson could have, and I haven't looked into this, so I'm not saying this is what it is, but he almost seems like he was inspired by some real warrior in history that's like, I'm always going to go after the person that is like a threat to me. And he's not really a part of the army. He's just this one soldier that goes around and hypes everybody up. But I do think that between him and Moash, it's like, all right, it's basically like, let's take out Kaladin time. Which was, it felt like we just needed to come up with reasons. And I'm like, just let him go for him. I don't know. I guess I'm with you there, where I felt like some of the discussion about why we need to get Kaladin was a little silly. I think my biggest criticism, and it remained, and it actually was, I think, even worse this time around, despite that I loved it. I love this book. But I thought that the conversation of if the Spren had really been betrayed by mankind, then how was Adolin going to convince them to help him now? That conversation has a lot of real world implications as well to, you know, if groups of people or countries have committed these atrocities, then what is the answer? Because, oh yeah, well, it happened hundreds, if not thousands of years ago, but it still has lasting effects. And so it's a really interesting discussion. I was really curious to see what Sanderson was going to do with it. And while I liked the reveal that the Spren chose, it sort of made all of that unnecessary a little bit. So on reread especially, I'm like, I know that none of this is going to matter because there's just going to be the reveal. And I wasn't intrigued by Adolin's idea of like, but I'm not the one that did it. I'm like, yeah, I know, but maybe
Not
try to
all
hear them
men.
out. Maybe try to like hear them out a little bit. It just, I don't know. I don't know if it's because I live in America and I feel like those exact statements have been said by people when we're discussing like what we've done in the past or what we do presently or whatever. But it just like, and I'm not even trying to hate on Adolin. It's not like an Adolin issue. It was just that I wish that we'd actually had a little bit more. I get why the honor spren aren't bridging the gap, especially because they're very different from humans. But I guess I just wish Adolin's idea of what he was supposed to do is more rooted in I have to come back to Daddy Dalinar and make him proud, as opposed to I really truly want to hear why they feel the way they feel, and I want to see them as beings deserving of respect and to listen and learn from them, and I want to do what's best for both mankind and for the Spren. And I know he wanted that too. I'm not saying he didn't, but it really felt like it was personal to his issues with his father. And I don't know. I just don't feel like it was as strong as it could have been, despite the fact that I enjoyed this version of Shadesmar that we get in this book versus we just kind of have to rush through it and get out here that you had. I like that we actually had the intent of going there and trying to learn more. I will say I did like Aiden's fight scene when those people were trying to go after the one Spren. I thought that was a really cool scene. And I just like him interacting with Maya and his horse, or technically Dalinar's horse,
Maya,
but I do
forgot
like those
about
moments
that.
quite a bit.
Yeah.
I love their bond. They're so cute.
Mhm.
Yeah. I do really enjoy those moments quite a bit. I like too, and I don't know what Sanderson has in store, but I like that Adolin, even though it's a struggle for him, I enjoy him remaining just a person. If that makes sense. I don't mean just a person in a negative way. But I like the juxtaposition of where he started being one of the most powerful people, and then now where he is, and he's seeing like this world of radiance and gods, basically, and how he fits into it. I like that you actually see him reflect on that. I don't always love that he has a bit of a pity party, but I like that he is asking himself, well, what can I do in this environment then? So I do like,
and I hope he stays that way. Like, I don't want him to be a Radiant. Like, I love that he's just a normal person.
Yeah, I don't think he will become one just because he has proven that. I kind of feel like him treating Maya the way he does is proven like you can help the Spren, the Deadeye, come back. And you see like with Shallan's, I'm completely spacing on the other Spren's name. And what is it called? The other one that's not Pattern. No, the one that she realized that she killed when she Testament, right?
I forgot.
I think it's Testament.
Something like that.
But
they're like, maybe that I guessed that revealed before it happened, and I was so proud of myself. I like never guessed things. Yeah.
So
I guessed it the page before it was revealed. I was like, oh.
I do think that if the theory about her mother is true, then it weirdly makes me feel better about the first time I read this. I thought this reveal was a little underwhelming. And I know a lot of people got mad because they were like, it was devastating that this little girl like killed her best friend, basically. And I'm like, that is sad. But I thought, I killed my mom.
Okay,
I killed my
Dalinar.
dad. But I feel like to come to terms with the fact that you killed your parents, like it just felt like that was a pretty intense thing. And I'm not saying the Spren wasn't important, but if it turns out that one theory is true, I feel like that next thing is maybe part of why Shallan is in the position she's in and the state she's in this book, where she seems to be still continuously regressing and retreating. Because I'm like, I really don't think I don't think your husband will hate you because of this mistake you made as a child, because she really thinks like everyone's going to hate me. And I'm not saying it has to be that theory is true for me to accept that that's her mindset, because she very much is in this place where she is so harsh on herself. But I just found that this reveal was a tiny bit, I guess, almost even convenient, because it played a role in Adolin's plotline too. And I don't know, it just wasn't my favorite of the Shallan reveals, I suppose.
I
But
guess it's like for Shallan, every time there's like a twist and a reveal that happens to her, it's like, oh, she killed someone else again. And I'm like, what are we gonna find out next time? That somehow she killed her brother instead of Kaladin? Like, how did that somehow that happened?
that would be quite the reveal. Very unexpected. She's actually responsible for Evie dying too. I don't know if you know, but she's the one that like threw a torch and yeah. Anyway, like it's really dark.
Yeah,
But
before she was even born. Like,
yep. Okay, praise or favorite scenes or most emotional moments. There's so many. Jessie, kick it off.
Kaladin and Wit, and their moment where Wit tells the story of the dog who wants to be the dragon. I freaking loved that story
Such a
so
good
much.
story.
I loved it so much. Any Kaladin and Wit interaction in this book, I was just eating it up. I loved it so much. Kaladin jumping. And the moment where he's grieving Teft and he jumps and says the words of the fourth ideal, I was just bawling, just absolutely bawling. And I had never cried from a Stormlight book until that moment. I just was bawling my eyes out. And it was just so emotional and got me so hard, but I loved it so much. His brother coming in to like save him, like it was just so good. And then Navani in this book, she went from being like a not even top 10 favorite to easily like right after the big three. I think she's my next favorite after this book. And her dynamic with Rabaniel, is that how you pronounce her name? Rubaniel was a fantastic villain. I think that the Stormlight books in general had kind of a villain problem up until that point where Odium being the big bad, he's kind of just like evil for the sake of being evil at this point, kind of. He gives off those vibes, like very like classic Marvel villain, like I'm just evil because I don't feel like it. And Rabaniel kind of gave us that very like morally gray, like you can very much see why she's doing the things she's doing. Loved all of that. And just Navani and her science experiments. I know a lot of people hate the science experiments. I loved the science experiments. Those were some of my like top things. And then the ending. Oathbringer had such a huge, gigantic ending that was just like thing after thing after thing. And I'm not a huge like wartime, like big epic battle type person. That's not like my favorite thing in fantasy. I like the quieter, more political moments. And the ending of this book and it being more about these like political reveals and these big like character twists, especially at the very end with the big character twist, that for me like hit much harder than an ending like Oathbringers. And I loved the ending of this book. So I think like there were just so many things that were first for me in this book, in the Stormlight series. The first time it made me cry, first time I really just like felt for a villain, and like the first time it was just the ending. Well, not the first time the ending hit me so hard. The Way of Kings ending was just amazing, but the ending of this one was amazing. So those are my favorites.
Yeah, I echo a lot of those moments, like the point where Kaladin jumps. Like I was like, what is happening? Like what is gonna save him? I was so scared and I cried a lot. I cried a lot in this book, period. But I think all of the Raboniel stuff, like I really loved and probably made me cry the most. I love the science experiments too, and like her working with, and when it's revealed what Raboniel's like motives are, that it was just so like relatable and like you said, a really good villain as Ella was saying.
Yeah.
But her stuff made me cry so much. So yeah, I think the ending really got to me emotionally. And yeah, that big reveal at the end, basically everything Jessie said.
Sophia, what about for you?
Some of the things that you all have said you didn't like, I really liked quite a lot. So I want to that a little bit. So that I think it's just this one chapter where Kaladin is sneaking around and he's being nearly caught, and there's just something it's so stressful. Even, and I've read this book 3 times now, and every time it's just as stressful, even though I know how it's going to turn out. I'm just like, oh my god, oh no, he's gonna get caught, oh no. And it's just like, and I think part of it is because I have nightmares on that theme fairly often, so it feels quite personal. So I'm like emotionally attached to it in that way. But just the intensity of that is just so great to me, and I really enjoy it. And then the trial, for want of a better word, in Shadesmar with Adolin, I really enjoy that whole, maybe that's the lawyer in me, probably it is. I just really enjoy that whole kind of sequence, and I was just so like proud, I suppose, of Maya just finally being able to speak her truth and say, like, they didn't do this to me, I chose this for myself. And it's still terrible what happened, but this belongs to me. So it's almost like an echo of "You can't take my pain." It belongs to her, so I really enjoy that. And I think, yeah, all of the scenes that you've both mentioned already, I love all of those as well. Honestly, this is one of those books that makes me wish that I could be a more emotional reader, because I don't, like, very, very, very rarely will I cry while reading a book. And so many times in this one, I wished that was me, because I was like, this is so good. Oh my god. Yeah, I love this book so much.
Christy, our Debbie
yeah,
Downer. I rushed through it. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm so sorry. I do feel like I did this book such a disservice by doing that, because like a lot of those moments where you're like, oh, the tension and the emotions, I'm like, I didn't get a chance to like sit with it, you know, and let it soak in.
Though,
But
because the first
Christy,
time I read it in 3 days.
just because you could. That's funny. Christy, I know what you mean, because that's how I felt about, what was it, Fool's Faith that we just read? Like, I didn't get to really sit with those emotions, but I was telling Daniel, I feel like it's one of those things where I just want to rip off the Band-Aid. Like, I don't want to prolong the pain. So I don't know. There's like pros and cons to doing it either way.
But I think it's also because of the audiobook. I did not like the audiobook. I don't.
Well, that's a good thing to recognize. That's a good thing to recognize, because I think there are a lot of readers who an audiobook can enhance the book for them, and then the opposite is true. And I think it's good for people to acknowledge that, because it is hard when that is your way of getting the story.
Yeah, usually I am a fan of audiobooks, but I think it's just particular narrators. Yeah. But I did like that the Wit, the story, the dog and the dragon, especially the beginning when Wit's like, this story has no meaning, so don't even try to like assign what to it. No meaning. Then at the end, Kaladin's like, I'm the dog, aren't I? It's like, what? I told you there's no meaning. I love that.
Such an iconic scene.
And I like that Wit's Spren just spoils his stories.
I love how opposite they are, because he's all about the storytelling, the suspense, and you know, the journey to get to the ending. And the Spren's just like, what? How does he know if it's worth it if he doesn't know what the ending is? And he's like, that's not the point.
I've bonded a monster.
Yes, I love that line. I also really like the science experiments. Like, I didn't know that people didn't like them, apparently.
I think because there's so many, some people feel it like, okay, I get it. I think that's the general.
But like, at the same time, if it was any shorter and they found the answer right away, people will be like, that's way too convenient. Like, you know? So I think they were okay, especially because like, you know, they like the Rabonia is like the villain, but when they come together like this, they kind of forget like what side they're on. They're just like
they're like peers.
Like they're so deep in their pursuit of like the truth, and I just love that. Oh god, again I forget. There was like one more thing that I wanted to say, but I forgot.
When I was away for just a moment, did we talk about David speaking?
No, we didn't.
That's a good moment.
The first time it was, I think more of like a, oh my gosh. But this time, I mean, I knew it was coming, but I was like, you can do it, you can do it. And I really enjoyed seeing that from him. And also the life before death, you jerk, basically, I'll say, that Navani says
Yes.
to Moash. It's like, yes, it's such a good moment.
Navani's so awesome in this book.
I also
hate
really
him
like all the
so
lift
much.
moments, and just like I said earlier, I like characters that sneak around and stuff. So just like knowing that she was there in the background doing stuff, I really liked. I mean, I like lift, so I liked all of that.
Mhm.
There's this
Sorry,
scene.
I just remember that other
Oh.
scene.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I just remembered that other scene that I wanted to mention. Like, I think you mentioned it. We already mentioned it, like Halloran speaking the words, but like the words themselves that he spoke, like, I accept that there are people that I can't save. And it's just so, like, such an epic moment because it's like a culmination of Kaladin's whole journey.
Yeah.
His, like, his whole life is like that. Everything he touches dies,
Yeah.
basically, and he can't like forgive himself for that. But that's like now he finally like lets himself accept it.
Okay. So good.
And the Tian telling him, because he's like, everybody
Yeah.
dies. He's like, well, yeah. So let's make the most of before.
Yeah.
And like
It's
then we'll,
like-
and I'm like, oh,
The real friends were all the connections we made along the way.
in a very bizarre way. Like, I know people loved Everything Everywhere All at Once. I didn't love that movie, but I feel like its message was like summed up by Tian in that moment. Like, yeah, we got to make the most of our time together. And Jesse, it looked like you were going to say something earlier. So before I start talking,
Totally forgot to mention that I actually really liked Shalon in this book. I think because what she offers that Kaladin and Dalinar don't, at least present day Dalinar, not like past Dalinar. Dalinar in the past was a whole different Dalinar. Present day Dalinar and Kaladin are kind of like the honorable, like you kind of, they're a little unpredictable sometimes, but like for the most part, like they're gonna do kind of what you expect of them every time. And Shalon, she kind of keeps me on the edge of my seat a little bit. And the whole introduction of Formless in this book and not knowing, like, I think there's a moment where she's like gonna like thinking about whether to stab somebody. Is this ringing a bell?
Yeah. Ela.
And I was like, I don't know. Like,
At the
I don't know
end.
if she's gonna do it. I don't know if she's gonna do it or not because I didn't know. Like, is Shalon gonna be like evil? Like that would be awesome.
I remember having that thought too.
I
that,
would
like,
have
is she
loved
gonna
that
turn?
actually.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was
I
kind
am
of
with-
bummed they went the safe route, but I also was like loving that I was questioning her in that way because it was kind of fun to like have her keep me on the edge of my seat a little bit. So I actually really like Shalon in this book.
Jesse, there's two things. She has that whole thing with Ela at the beginning, which, by the way, way to off that character unexpectedly really fast at the beginning of this book. I wasn't expecting that. But then I think it's, no, not Ray's. Ray's is before Taravangi and Odium. It's with an R, though. The other Herald that she's like tasked to go find, and he's the one.
Staries or
Yeah.
Kelek.
Sorry. Mhm.
So he is the one that she's thinking about because she figures if I kill him and then I take his place and I light weave, then I can just give Adolin the good verdict.
I
we'll
thought
say.
she was gonna do it. Yeah.
Yeah,
know.
I definitely remember questioning that and being like, oh my
I
god.
kind
is
of
this
thought it
how-
would be. If she had.
Yeah.
It was such a chilling moment when Formless finally emerged, but then it's like, it's not Formless, it's just Shalon. I was like, oh crap.
She's basically so mean to Adolin, and he's just like, "You're right." And I'm like, "Oh, jeez, this is the real Shalon is very mean."
Shalon's like kind of intense.
Just
in this book.
paving the way for my Kaladin Adolin matchup. It's all good.
So as far as most emotional scenes, when Kaladin is essentially released from active duty, that both times devastated me. I knew it was coming this time. I had to stop before I read that chapter, a single casualty, because it's so heartbreaking to me. I get that it ended up resulting in something good in the end, because he really did need to take that time. And I like the direction we went in of mental health and like how do we help the people that don't have the physical wounds, and what Kaladin's doing to help them as well with that man who's just stuck in the dark and everything. I thought that was really well done. And I also really like when Adolin, before he leaves, tells Kaladin, like, well, you're everybody's most eligible bachelor now. So when are the women
I
gonna
love
start
that.
lining up? And he sees them, he's like, oh my gosh, I already started. And Kaladin's like, I thought maybe that their city lord, high, whatever, were like gone for the war. And he doesn't realize it, that like all these people are like, let's go see that sexy man, basically. They all just suddenly have headaches. I do really like that like this moment because it upset me a lot, but I liked that Sanderson put it in when Liren gets mad at Kaladin for killing in. I hate Liren's reaction to his own son on multiple occasions, especially when he's like, I'm going to turn Kaladin in. I'm like, what is wrong with you? So Liren made me mad, but that clashing of principles between him and Kaladin I thought was really well done, and it evoked a lot in me. So I really liked that we did that. I like a lot of the Relaine moments in this. I liked that Relaine rejected Kaladin's initial, like, I found a friend to just, I forced him and told him he had to try. And Relaine rejects that. I really like the more moments we get with them. I echo, obviously, a lot of what we've been discussing already with a lot of the moments in this book. There's just so many good moments. I think we got so caught up talking to Patrick, I didn't get the chance to say that I think this one might be my favorite. I still have such a soft spot for Way of Kings, like Jade talked about at the beginning. But I think as far as rereads go, I just love the way this is tied to Way of Kings and that like kind of push with Kaladin's arc. And Christy, you summed it up really well where you were saying it's kind of a culmination in that fourth ideal for him. And so there's just too many really emotional moments for this one to not maybe be my favorite. And plus the expansion of our understanding of their world and of how the magic works, I think all of that's done really well. And also we finally get some more Yasna, and her and Wit
and Yasna.
Her and Wit are such I love like that relationship.
I love it.
I love it as well, and I love that there's that asexual representation there with Yasna. I just love that so much because it's so absent in so much literature, and it just.
I love that it was just like a deeply emotional, like mental connection that they had. I love them. I was like, I was not expecting it.
I have to say, I saw somebody online that was like, did I just miss what everybody else apparently saw? Because I didn't think that there was anything between them. I'm like, what? At all?
I think they need to go.
I had a feeling like at the end of Words of Radiance when they had that scene together, I was like, is something going on between them? And then it was kind of confirmed in this one. I'm like, ooh, I don't know how I feel about this. Like I can appreciate the intellectual connection that they have, but I'm like, I don't know how I feel about them being romantically involved.
To be a little less ridiculous when he's like really kind of frightening Wit. That seems more fitting to me. When he's like goofy Wit, I'm like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yes.
So I'm like,
I feel like with how old he is, she's just like such a perfect fit for him because he is so silly, but he's also, I mean, we don't even really know, but I in my mind, he's lived through thousands of years probably at this point, and she's just like such a perfect character to deal with that and just be like, yeah, okay, that's fine, no worries.
They challenge each other somehow.
Yeah. And the other thing I didn't mention before that I also really, really love in the Stormlight Archive in general, but I think it's done especially well in Rhythm of War, is all of the disability representation of all different kinds. I think it's just so well done, and I connect with it on a personal level because Kaladin's depression and my depression have some similarities there, but also because I used to work with vulnerable adults with various different disabilities. I feel such a connection to it, and I'm just so grateful that he's included it all, because I think it's so important that people get an understanding of what all of these different types of various conditions can look like. I just think he did such a good job in this book, especially, as I said, like all of them, but especially this one.
Yeah, and how he was like, there's not one way to like treat someone with those kinds of conditions, right? And I really liked that he basically invented group therapy.
And I even like to Kaladin having this idea of, well, but I mean, they need it, and I don't want to take up space. I don't want to take away, and people making him realize like you deserve to be taken care of too. And just because maybe you have more capabilities at this time doesn't mean that you shouldn't still, because I think a lot of people struggle with that. No matter what your background is, there's this idea that if your life is relatively convenient or if you have a fair amount of privilege, that your mental health somehow doesn't matter. And it is a privilege to be able to treat your mental health, because there are a lot of people that don't have the time, the means, the money. But that doesn't mean that you should neglect it, because when you're in a better place, you can better help other people as well. So I like Kaladin having to reflect on that. And I like him and his father kind of challenging what their norm is for how to help people. So I really enjoyed that as well. I was going to add, before we come away from the wit thing, the ending is so frightening.
Scary. So
yeah,
scary.
It's alarming to be like, what is gonna happen here? And
Is it confirmed what the ending means, or is it kind of just like we all don't really know?
I think
like
it's
theories.
a wait and see kind of situation.
There are some possible answers in Yumi, but it isn't clear whether they are answers to the questions we're asking or answers to questions we don't know to ask yet.
Yeah.
Oh, Sanderson.
It is, truly.
Yeah, I remember being horrified by that ending. Like, what?
Because it leaves off in kind of a hopeful place. You're like, we got another bondsmith, and like, yeah.
Just to think that someone could be that powerful, like, oh my god.
I think I read that scene twice the first time I read the book, because I was like, I'm not convinced I actually understood what I just read. And then I read it again and I was like, no, I definitely didn't understand what I just read, but I guess that's how I'm supposed to feel about it.
It is kind of funny to see Wit have to repeat his theatrics, because it makes him look like an idiot. So I kind of enjoyed that. And also, I like that Renarin is such a integral part of the diagram and that blind spot for previous Odium. And I really like that. I'm like waiting for Renarin to get to play more of a role.
I'm so interested in Renarin. Like, I just feel like there's so much there.
He's such a mystery.
And the Relaine.
The whole thing with like Renarin and Odium, like not being able to see what's happening when people are close to him, it really reminds me of in Hero of Ages, where
should I put up a spoiler?
We can't. You know what I mean. You know, I'll just say.
We know what you mean. Yeah, but other people, just in case. I think.
Sorry, I don't.
No.
I'm like, my assumption. Sorry, everyone has already read this.
We're all just like.
But no, we do know what we know what you're talking about. You are able to non-spoiler where you were going. Are you just saying it reminded you of that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It does resemble.
Jesse has thoughts. Are you okay, Jesse?
I'm just reading like breakdowns of the ending, because it was just like remembering how it all plays out. It's so intense.
I know. I feel like I'm missing a couple pieces here. I just need to reread. So.
Part of it for sure, which I think a lot of us would know this, and I'm not going to give spoilers, but just in case anybody is like really confused, I think part of it has to do with how things work from Warbreaker, as far as like the memories.
I have not read Warbreaker.
Yeah. But like it reminded me in some ways of like a Mistborn magic system too, because you do see, this is not a spoiler, there's a character in the backstory with an interesting name, I don't want to say who it is, and they talk about like, oh, I study things and I store things and these interesting pieces of stuff I wear.
I think that's what happened. That's my I do think that is what is going on here, because I just think that Wit is way too intelligent to, I mean, Taravangian is intelligent, Odium is intelligent, sure, but I just feel like Wit is gonna always have one up.
That's what it always seemed like. That's why that ending was terrifying.
So chilling, yeah, exactly.
Also, what version of Taravangian are we getting? You know, like I this maybe is a stupid question, but like smart versus dumb. is that gonna still apply to him as Odium? I wouldn't think so. But that would be kind of funny if one day Odium's like crying.
It just goes back to the whole thing where I'm like, these gods are just so silly.
Like that they are the way they are, though. I don't disagree that sometimes you're like, why aren't they more epic? But because they're beings like holding these shards as opposed, and like the shards have kind of transformed them in a sense, as opposed to just they are what we typically what we typically see in fantasy. But I am with you where there's like the occasional scene with like the Stormfather or what you described before with Moash and Odium, like how can we get him?
Yeah.
Also,
Yeah, there was
one
that
question. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Just before we get off this topic, there's one scene I remember with the Stormfather where Dalinar is like, "Can't you save these people?" Like Stormfather's like, "No, I can't." Blah 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 blah. And he's like, "By the way, they just got crushed by a boulder right after we stopped talking."
Yeah.
Like right after we started talking, and I'm like, "Okay." He's just like, "Oops."
Yeah.
What is this?
I feel like up until Rhythm of War, the whole joke about like Moash did nothing wrong. There were interesting, nuanced conversations to have about, is he if this was Mistborn, would he actually be the hero? Because you're seeing like parallels with him and Kelsier and things like that. And like he's taking down this corrupt, flippant, these rulers that don't seem to care at all. They don't know what they're doing. They have this horrible class system. But in this book, I'm like, he's literally trying to push his best friend to kill himself, and he kills Teft, and then he's like, I don't feel bad for killing him. I just feel bad for myself for feeling bad. You're just like, dude, what
exactly. Like before.
Yeah.
Like before, it's like, okay, Odium took away his pain and feelings. Like he doesn't feel anything. Like, okay, fine. But then when he gets it back and he realizes, yeah, I don't actually feel bad. Like, I'm just sorry. Like I got caught or whatever. I'm like, okay, you suck.
Yeah.
So I feel like this group is like, no, Moash did plenty wrong.
Yeah.
He could have been a character that there was a lot of nuance around, and he just kind of tanked.
Yeah.
And I
thought there was
going
going to be some sort of redemption. Yeah, I thought there was going to be one, but I don't anymore. And that is attempted, and it's not going to work on me, I don't think. But yeah, I don't think there's any redemption for him.
Killing a member of Bridge 4 is just, that's it.
Oh, yeah.
Off with his head.
That reminds me of back to Oathbringer, where after I'm like, spoilers? Yeah, we can talk about Oathbringer spoilers. After he killed Elokar and he had the audacity to do the salute, I was like, how dare you? Unforgivable.
Dirty rat.
He weirdly still sticks up for Kaladin when he goes to attack Navani, and he's like, well, that Kaladin and Amaram and whatever. And I'm just like, dude, Kaladin is not approve of this. What are you doing? I haven't mentioned yet, by the way, I love the Leshwi Kaladin respect and honor between each other.
Yeah, so nice.
Yes. That was another thing that I remember mentioning in my review, was that I feel like Leshwi handled the like respect of Kaladin like better than like some of the people that are on the quote unquote good side in the book. Like it makes you think, like, is there a good or in a bad side? It's like all that complexity of themes of war. There is no good, there is no bad. There's just it's like, both sides are wrong.
I think she's going to be really important in book 5.
Yeah. Speaking of Leshwi, another moment that got me really emotional was when Venli finally revealed like what she was, and Leshwi is like, "What have you done?" But then at the next chapter, when it goes back to it, she's like they come back, they've forgiven us, they come back, and to find out that she also had like a friend that she had bonded with before. It was so good.
Jesse, it looked like you were about to say something earlier, and I think we are pretty close here to wrapping up, so we'll kind of give our final thoughts. But were you going to say something before?
No, but I just no, I don't know what I was going to say.
Okay.
No, just like final thoughts. The ending rocks. Apparently, I didn't know that the ending was like a mixed kind of reception. Like there was
I
a
didn't
mixed
know that
reception.
either.
Of the ending. Like some people finding it unsatisfying. I didn't realize that. Like I was just doing like quick search of like ending breakdowns and like people like talking about it, and people were like, "Oh, it's a very unsatisfying. Anybody else feel this way?" And yeah, it was very. I was like, "What? This is like the most satisfying ending."
I mean,
ever.
the only thing I feel like is I want more Zeth. I'm excited for us to finally get more Zeth.
Yeah.
And whatever the heck was going on with the experimentation on the Spren,
Yeah,
I'm
what the
curious to
heck?
see.
Yes. Yes. So I can't wait.
Oh,
for
yeah.
Stormlight 5. I'm so scared. I'm so scared.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Anything
I'm gonna
else?
be
Speaking of
reading it
Stormlight
after.
5, one of my friends is like the biggest Stormlight fan ever, but he's like, he will hate this series if in book 5 somehow Silladin becomes a thing.
Yes, I'm
So-
in
Oh, I
agreement.
agree.
So I started like just
Chrissy has
making
been
I just started making comments. Like I started like saying I ship them ironically to just like annoy him.
just to get under his
now.
skin.
But now sometimes I'm like, some of the scenes between them, I'm like, ooh, I don't know, maybe it's not ironic anymore.
You've like spoken it into existence.
I don't think it'll
Convinced
happen.
yourself.
I don't
It's
think it'll
probably not,
happen.
but I think it would just be great to see his reaction if it does.
And I used to root for Shallan and Kaladin. And after this book, I just never think that's going to happen. I just don't know. Unless like Adolin has some crazy plot twist thingy coming up. But I
I
just
could
don't see it.
see, now that we're talking about Rhythm of War, I could see if like Shallan has a child and Adolin dies, Kaladin like stepping in to help, but not, I'm not even saying that they would be romantic. I could just see
Right.
him stepping in
Mhm.
to with that role. But I mean, I don't know. We'll see.
The
I
three
feel like
of
the
them had
big
so little scenes in this book, which was another thing that I didn't like as much.
Yeah.
I just really don't think Kaladin's gonna make it, and I'm so sad.
say that, okay? I don't want to hear it.
I know,
Don't
but
speak that into existence. Oh,
Yeah, if
man.
someone's gonna die, I feel like it would be Dalinar that would.
I mean, yeah, I have thought that he was gonna not make it out of multiple books, but
I think that they are
Megan.
somehow going to, because you see that it would seem Gavilar was trying to become a herald himself. I kind of think they're going to try to make a new version of the Oath Pact, and that some of them are going to hold on for a certain amount of time, and then when we start Stormlight 6, I think it'll be the Oath Pact has ended, and now we're like literally in the final showdown again.
yeah.
That's my
My
guess.
favorite theory that I've heard, and I feel like it's possible, is that Syl is Honor and that she's just forgotten.
Oh,
I like that.
Whoa.
That's a
Oh, I
good
love
theory.
that.
that's
Oh,
interesting. I'll have to look into that more.
that would be so emotional.
I know, right?
You don't think
But
that other people would
this
realize
is what I
that?
think. I feel like Kaladin's not going to make it, and that's going to be the catalyst that reminds her.
Oh, I would. You said you
know.
haven't like
But
really
wouldn't-
cried in a book, Sophia. I think that might finally.
That's going to get me. If that doesn't get me, nothing will.
Wouldn't the Stormfather recognize that she's Honor, or like wouldn't like the
I don't
really wouldn't somebody recognize that though?
Also,
Yeah,
that would
I
make
don't-
like who's Tana Vast then if it's not Honor? I don't know.
These are why these theories are fun though. But I don't like this one because I don't want to imagine it. I don't like that
I
at all.
know.
I like
I don't want to imagine it either.
better the theory that Elle is the Herald somehow, and that he's been, because he never broke. That's the thing. They think he broke, he didn't, which proves that the Stormfather doesn't know all. And so I feel like, and also it makes note of him being the best. He's a great fighter, because when Dalinar is fighting Nail, I think it, I get them mixed up. He's fighting somebody, and then Zest shows up and just gets like smacked, and he's really
Yeah.
powerful. And the Stormfather says something like the other one was actually the strongest, and I'm like, if that ends up being Odium's champion, that's quite the champion. So I don't know. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, something that will make you feel better is that I have never, ever, in all of the Sanderson books that I've read, I have never guessed anything correctly. So
I think when you said
I have, but only by a
theory
couple
that
pages.
the theory that Adolin could be the champion, I never even like entertained that.
Oh, really?
thought. But it I think that would be cool because it's like originally he wanted Dalinar, but he couldn't get Dalinar, so he's like, I'll take your son instead.
But it's a
Like,
new
yeah.
version of Odium too.
That's true too.
I kind of wonder now if it would be because he's the best duelist. He's been struggling with this I'm not a Radiant kind of thing. I think it could be interesting if it's him and this Herald is like the best of them and then the best of, you know, like the best duelist now. That could be kind of cool. I don't know. We'll see. These theories are fun, but I know Jesse has to get going. We've been chatting for over 2 hours, or at least you all have. I was gone for part of it, which was annoying. Jesse, you missed that. There were technical difficulties at the beginning, and it made me
We were
very
talking
mad.
about Oathbringer, and she was talking about how she didn't like Dalinar, and he kicked her out a couple times.
That's what
I don't-
I
I was talking about how if he had just stuck it out for another apparently 2 months, he wouldn't have ever had to free it, Abby. And anyway, it was.
It was
But I
hilarious.
got booted out multiple times. So anyway, this was a really fun discussion. Was there anything else anybody wanted to add before we wrap it up? No.
Now I feel like I need to reread it all.
Yeah.
That'll be fun next year, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, I just
Oh,
finished my reread, so
one final thought is I have no understanding of how they choose what goes on the covers of these books. Like, I feel like the character that they put on the cover is always the one that has like the least to do with that book.
yes, not being
Maybe
on
that's
the
on
cover of
purpose.
Oathbringer is interesting.
Yeah, and then like in this one, it's like I guess it's Shallan and Adolin, or Shallan and Adolin and Shadesmar, but I'm like that part was so
One-
small compared to all the other plots.
One reason I used to think that, I used to think that there was more legitimacy to the idea of Adolin as Odium's champion is because on all the Stormlight covers, you kind of see the enemy as the other smaller figure in the background. So for the first one, you see a Parshendi, or like you see another soldier. And in the second one, you see Zeth, I believe. Third one, you see the Thunderclast. And then the fourth one, it's Adolin. So I was like, but he's not really a villain. So I always thought it was interesting that he was the figure in the back.
Interesting.
So I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if he does something with Adolin and the champion, but I don't know what he's going to do with that, if anything.
Yeah.
Anyway, any other final thoughts? No, this was lots of fun. I'm glad Jesse and Jade were able to join us.
Making me join. I appreciate
Yeah,
it. Thanks for inviting me.
it was a lot of fun. It's the end. It's the end of an era. All of our chats this year and a little bit last year, so it's been a lot of fun. I really look forward to looking more into the theories, looking forward to the lead up to Stormlight 5. I'm really excited. I think a lot of us are really excited. Also really scared. So this has been lots of fun though. Thanks everybody for joining, and we'll see you later. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.